morning, Sunrise Beauty team. It's about 9 o'clock on Tuesday. I know a lot of you probably are not necessarily online right now, but I wanted to go ahead and do this as a live, just in case anybody is on and wants to contribute any tips to the topic today, and also just so that it will be here in the group and ready for you whenever you do get online today. Just because I'll be out making some deliveries this morning, so it'll be a while before I can actually get the video up on YouTube and up on the sunrisebeautyteam.com on our team website. So just wanted to have this here for you when you do get into the group, whenever you do today. I want to thank, I had a conversation with Rochelle Vuksanovic late last week, and we were talking about helping our customers choose the right size in clothing. So I thought that would be a great Tuesday's topic. She had good advice for her customer, and I thought that this was maybe something that would be good to cover, so we can all be a little bit better at helping our customers choose the right size in clothing and shoes, because of course we want them to have clothes that that fit well and that are comfortable. And also, this is one of the areas that if you really want to minimize your amount of returns, the amount of products you have to deal with returning, clothing and shoes is a big area of returns for most representatives, because obviously if you go into a store, you're going to try on the clothes in the fitting room, and you're going to find out right then and there before you buy it if it fits or not. When you're shopping from a catalog, obviously you can't do that. So the more knowledge we have about the clothing and how things fit, and what things to look for when helping a customer decide what's going to fit them right, the better we're able to minimize those returns, the better we are to help them get the right fit in the first place. And another reason why we really want to improve our percentage in recommending the right size to begin with is, of course, our new fashion lines. We have more sizes, more styles, more things going, and the clothes are more and more popular. The clothing is going to sell out faster. So if we choose the wrong size up front, we may have more of an situation where when we go to return it, go to exchange that item for a different size, the new size may not be available. And that is one area where, I will, if it's a good customer, depending on the situation, I don't always do this if there's a question on size, but I will sometimes order both sizes in something, so that if we're just really not sure, we don't want the customer really wants the item, we don't want to risk the alternate size not being available. More likely to do this sometimes with stuff that's on clearance, that's in the outlet or while supplies last. So we want to make sure that if we're really not sure which size, I want to make sure that they get the right size, or if it's an article that they need by a certain date, then I might be inclined to order both sizes and then have them try them on. And of course, usually this is when I'm going to be there, delivering in person, and have a few minutes so they can try it on at that time. It would have to be a really good customer before I would leave them with both sizes. And then come back and pick up the one that didn't fit. But you have to gauge that for yourself and your relationship with the customers. And if it's somebody who's likely to take advantage of you, then you absolutely don't want to do that. So you want to weigh those possibilities. So helping the customer choose the right fit. Of course, we do have in the brochure now, a lot of times we'll have the size chart. If you've got a campaign that the brochure doesn't have the size chart in it, and of course anything campaign 1 2018 and later, the size chart has been adjusted. So if it's a clearance item, be sure to really look at that specific item and the sizing on that, because the sizes did change. Our small, medium, and large items, the sizes included in each size shifted. So for example, now The large is 12-14. That used to be 14-16. So you want to make sure if it's while supplies last item, if it's a 2017 or earlier item, which really while supplies last, we probably only have 2017 items left. But if it's earlier than the beginning of 2018, that's going to be under the old size chart, especially if it's a Mark fashion item, because those had a completely different, it used to be Mark and Avon had separate size charts. Now they have the same, which is great, because that means if they're a certain size in Mark, they're going to be the same size in Avon. That makes that a little bit easier. And that kind of eliminates that whole, we used to always hear Mark sizes run small. Well, Mark sizes didn't run small. Mark sizes were junior sizes, which have a narrower cut to them than Mrs. sizes, which is what our Avon clothing was. So that was kind of a misconception that standardizing those sizes got rid of. If you don't have the size chart in the brochure that you're looking at, go to your online store, and at the very bottom there's a fit guide. So you want the one that says new Avon and Mark sizing, the one that has both Avon and Mark together. So you can pull those up. Also, most of the clothing items on your online store will have a fit guide. So in the description there'll be a little tab there. Sometimes it's easy to overlook, but if you know it's there, it's easier to find, a little tab that says fit guide, and you can pull that up on your online store. And that also helps with older products that you're not sure, if it's not new in this brochure and you're not sure if it falls under the new sizing chart or the old sizing chart, you can pull that up on your online store to see. So we do have the sizing chart. The sizing chart will give the bust, waist, and hip measurements for each size. And then most of the clothing now will also list a back length and an inseam if it's pants. And I believe the skirts usually have, the skirts might have a length on them too, but the dresses and tops have a back length, and that's the length from, right here in the center of the back, between the shoulders, to the bottom of the item of clothing. And then the inseam, of course, is the inseam of the pants. So what your inseam would be there. So you've got all of these measurements to work with. Where it sometimes gets a little tricky is, say for example, somebody is looking at the sizing chart and their bust and waist measurement is one size, but maybe the hip measurement is a different size. That's when you would want to look at the article of clothing and the cut to that article of clothing and see which measurement you want to go off of if you've got multiple measurements. Something like the peasant top that has more of a tunic length, the hip measurement is going to be a consideration, because the top does come down over the hips. But if you're looking at something more like this printed peasant top, this hits more at the top of the hip. So this top isn't going to be as much of a factor in the hip. Then that's also where the back length comes in, because if it's a longer, you want to see how the length is going to be on that customer. Because whereas on this model, we have no idea how tall she is. This is hitting at the top of her hip. I'm like right on the borderline between average and petite. This may fall a little bit lower on me. Or, there's also considerations like, if you're very big in the chest, the front of a top is not going to fall as low. So you might want a longer length in your tops if you have that, that consideration. If you're like over a C cup, figure C is about average. Most clothing is kind of designed for around a C cup. And then, of course, that varies, and you can kind of tell by looking at the item if it's going to be, if that's going to be a factor that's going to come into play. But if they're between sizes, so you want to look at, where they're most concerned about the fit. Some people don't really want things to be tight in the chest. They don't want things to be tight in the shoulder. They don't want things to be tight in the chest or the waist. So you can look at the different measurements and see maybe they want to go up a size or down a size. one of the things that Rochelle and I talked about was in the sizing for a t-shirt, the customer was kind of going to be between two sizes. And the consideration that we looked at was, is that customer, when she's looking, she was looking at a 4-pack of t-shirts, does she like her t-shirts to fit snug and close to the body, not clingy, but fit, just skim right over the body, or do they like them to be a looser fit? And so that comes into play too when you're looking at the size. If they're in between sizes or they're debating between two sizes, look at how the item fits. So, the t-shirts are they're not a fitted cut. They don't necessarily come in at the waist or anything like that. And if you go up a size, you risk they might be too baggy. You go down a size, they could be too tight. So you want to look at how you like the items to fit. And one way that this really, a place to really get some help with this, there is a Facebook group called Reps Wearing Avon Fashion, and Avon is A.V.O.N. Just that's the way they have. So if you look for Reps Wearing Avon Fashions, this is where representatives have posted pictures of themselves wearing the fashions and give a little bit of information about here's my body type and here's how it fit, or here's the things that I liked about it, or that maybe weren't as great for because not every piece is going to fit everybody the same. One example is the Mia ruffle blouse. When I got that blouse fit perfect in the shoulder and the chest, but it was way too loose for me in the hips. So I mentioned in my video that I did for my customers that I know quite a few people that having something that is a little not as tight in the hips is going to be a fantastic thing. For me, it didn't have a flattering silhouette to it because it was just too much fabric around the hips. So that's the kind of thing that you want to look at. You want to look at the the style and how it's going to fit. For example, something like the skirt, this where it's more of like a pencil skirt style. The hips measurement is going to come into play more than the waist. So take a look at how something is designed. Something like this shirt dress. If you're going to be in between two sizes, you don't want to go for the larger size necessarily, because it's going to be too baggy. So then you want to, again, check the measurements and see, is it going to be too tight in the chest where you're going to get gaping of the buttons? Well, because that would be something you would look at with something that buttons up the front like a blouse or a shirt dress. So definitely use those measurements, use that fit guide to help you determine how something is going to fit for a customer. Looking at the length of things. Again, we're looking at a model that, where this hits her at the top of the calf, but where is it going to fit? Again, we don't know what her height is. So using that back length measurement. So in this case, the back length is 46 inches, on the medium. So you can figure, the large is going to be a little bit larger, the small is going to be a little bit smaller on the back length, but that's going to be roughly what the length on the dress is. So yeah, and then things like, things that are sized in small, medium, and large. If we have something that's sized in small, medium, and large instead of in the individual number sizes, that just means that, the difference between two sizes is going to be so small, such a minute difference between the two sizes that it wasn't going to be worth producing the product in the more sizes. So the small, medium, and large would be enough instead of doing 6 different sizes. So that's something too that, if it is something that comes in each of the, it comes in an 8, a 10, a 12, and a 14, then it's going to be a more fitted product than something that comes in a small, medium, large type thing. And you can always figure, that if it's a medium, mediums are 8, 10, it's going to be closer to a size 10 because obviously it has to be big enough to fit a size 10. So if somebody is looking at, if they're trying to decide between the small and the medium, and because they usually either wear a 6 or an 8, again, you want to look at, do they want it to be, do they like things to fit more skimming the body, or do they like things to fit more loose, but also that the medium is going to be closer to a size 10 than the 8. It's going to be a little bit more toward that larger size. Shoes is another thing that obviously we have, you know, the same sort of thing. Unfortunately, I was looking on our online stores, and there is a fit guide. There is sort of like a paper version of that metal measuring doohickey that they have in shoe stores. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to figure out how to get it to print right. So if anybody gets in and plays with that and figures out how to get it to print right, or can maybe put it in a PDF form that would be easier to print, because I can't get it to print big enough. They have a they have the foot guide, but then they also have ruler markings on the side so that you can make sure that the foot guide has printed the proper size. And I can't really figure out how to get it to print right, because it needs to print basically as 2 pages. It's too big for 1 page, but I haven't been able to figure out how to get that to print. So unfortunately, we're flying a little more blind with shoes. I do know that you know, if a customer's looking between 2 different sizes, this often happens if somebody is a half size. Typically, Avon's recommendation is to go up to the next. So if you're a 7.5, to go for the 8 instead of the 7. And on one of the live videos that Michael Senstack, our VP over the fashion, had answered a question about, you know, what is the width of our shoes. And our shoes are a medium width, but they fall a little bit toward the wide on most of our shoes. So that may help in deciding, you know, if somebody has a very narrow foot, they're going to want to go down a size if they're a half size instead of going up. But if they have a little bit wider foot, then they're going to want to go up. So you're going to want to take that into consideration when choosing the shoes. And then the shoes are the same way with the small, when they're small, medium, large shoes. Obviously, that's a shoe that the fit is not as, doesn't need to be as precise as when we have the individual sizes, the individual numbered sizes. But it's going to be, a medium is going to be closer to a size 8. So then, you know, you get into the 2 sizes that are problematic with small, medium, and large shoes is a 6.5 and the 8.5, because the 6.5 would be between a small and a medium, and the 7.5 would be between a medium and a large. Typically, I would say if you're a 6.5, you would go with the small. If you're an 8.5, you would go with the medium. But again, this may be some trial and error. The good news is once a customer knows what size they wear in our shoes, 9 times out of 10, that's going to be the size they're going to wear. Every once in a while, we'll have a shoe that runs a little bit wider or a little bit narrower, and that'll affect the fit. But generally, once they know what size they wear, that's going to be the size they're going to wear in all of our shoes. And that's something we hear all the time. You know, our clothing is our shoes true to size. The problem with thinking of something as being true to size is there is no industry standard for sizes. That's why we have the fit guide with the measurements, because there is no industry standard. There is nothing that says a size 8 needs to fit these measurements. Excuse me just a moment. The dogs are a little insistent that they need to go outside. Sorry about that, guys. So there's not really an industry standard. So once they know what size they wear in our clothing, in our shoes, yes, that size is going to be consistent across all of our line. And I will say that, you know, most of the other places that I shop, I do wear the same size, but most people go back and forth. A lot of people, you'll say, what size do you wear? You won't find anybody who says just flat, I wear a size 16, because the sizes are not standardized. And typically, the more expensive an article of clothing is, the smaller the size you'll wear in that, you know, that article of clothing. in terms of, you know, who designed it. The more expensive the designer, the smaller the size you're going to wear typically. It's called vanity sizing. And then also if you look at, you know, ready to wear versus custom, pattern sizes are not, you know, I wear a much larger size if I'm making the clothes myself than I do in ready to wear clothing. So that's, whenever somebody asks, is your clothing true to size? It's consistent among our clothing, but there really is no such thing as true to size. There is no standard that says this is what size a size 8 should be, this is what size a size 16 should be, this is what size a size 22 should be. So you know, our sizing is standard, and then of course you do have to take into consideration the cut on an item, because obviously, you know, a blouse that's designed to be fitted is going to fit differently than a peasant top that's designed to be loose. So, you know, I do find that I wear the same size in Avon clothing that I do other brands that I buy, other places that I shop, and I tend to shop at big box type stores. So, you know, it's the same size as I would wear if I were shopping at Target or Walmart. I actually probably wear a smaller size than I do at some of the more like big name stores, but not box stores, like clothing specific stores, like a Catherine's or a Lane Bryant, or you know, the stores you would find in the mall. I think I tend to wear a smaller size in Avon than I do in those clothes. So it's just going to depend on where else they get their clothes, on if our clothes are going to be the same size as those. So that's when you want to refer to that fit guide and make sure that, you know, that they're checking that with their measurements. And if you pull up the fit guide, it's not on the fit guide in the brochure, of course, because there's limited space. But if you pull up the fit guide on our online store, if you go to the fit guide at the bottom of the page on our online store or on any of the clothing items, there actually is instructions on how to properly measure to make sure that your measurements match what's on the fit guide. So that's kind of all the tips that I've got. Throw up in the comments any other tips or suggestions, things that have worked well for you and your customers in helping to decide the right size when you're helping them to pick out what size they're going to order. So yeah, this will be up on the group immediately for anybody who didn't catch it while I was live. And later today, I'll get it up on YouTube and on the sunrisebeautyteam.com page. So hope you all are having a wonderful, wonderful week. And I will see you again next week with recognition. And then in 2 weeks with another Tuesday topic. So see y'all soon.